Hello everybody, welcome to this video. Today we're going to talk about the use case of sentiment analysis on tweets. So this is the workflow that you see here. This is the one that we're going to implement live in the Ryax platform. It consists of pulling real tweets from a Twitter API, classifying them using a text sentiment analysis, and publishing them in a very digestible way. To do that, here is a step we're going to take. We're going to start with building the workflow structure. Then we'll go on to configuring the modules. After that, we'll be able to run the sentiment analysis on actual tweets. After this, we would like to show you how to push your own code into Ryax so as to improve your workflow. We're going to run the workflow with your enhancement, your custom-made module. It's going to be a Google Sheet publisher. And in the end, we're going to demonstrate how to quickly swap modules in the workflow so as to transform it as you wish. We're going to start with building this whole workflow. It's set up with 4 different steps. The first one is a trigger that is able to generate a new workflow execution every once in a while. The second step is about pulling actual tweets from the Twitter API. The third step is about classifying these tweets. We're going to use a DistilBERT text classifier that will specify whether these tweets have a positive or negative connotation. And then we're going to push them onto a Google Sheet. So let's move to the Ryax platform. I'm going to connect to the Ryax platform. Here is my studio. This is where I'm going to be able to manage all my different workflows. So let's create a new one. I'm going to call it Twitter Analysis. It's going to pull tweets and analyze them. Let's save it. So my new workflow is created. I'm now able to use this canvas to drag and drop modules and build my treatment chain step by step. So the first module that we're going to use is the Emit Every module. It's basically a frequency trigger. It's going to trigger one execution, one run of the workflow once in a while, and we're going to be able to specify the frequency. The second step of my workflow is the Twitter pull module. I'm going to use this one, get tweets. The credentials are already embedded in the module, so I won't have to add them. It's going to be all set up. The third step is my actual text classifier, my model that I've been developing as a data scientist, and that's going to be able to decide whether some tweet is rather positive or negative. Next step is I interlink different modules for the data flow to be able to go through one module to the next. My modules are all interlinked, so let's set them up, because as you can see, I have small warnings here, small warning bubbles on the modules, and also an invalid status on the workflow as a whole. So it means I still have to configure some of the modules. So let's click on the first one. You can see that it's a source module, meaning that it's being used as a starting point of a workflow. It's being able to run and trigger any kind of workflow. Moved on to the input tab. As you can see here, this is the configuration I need to specify as a user for this module to work properly. So let's say I want to run this specific workflow once per day. I'm going to enter 1 in day, 0 in hours, 0 in minutes, 0 seconds. So my workflow will be triggered once every day. The output is an actual timestamp, and the properties, I can set a custom name. Let's say run once a day. So now my workflow is a bit more clear. It's easy to see exactly what it does. The second step is to set up the Tweets API module. So as you can see, it's not the source module, it's a processor, because it's being able to process data. The input, as seen in the documentation of this module, is a hashtag. So I can enter the hashtag DataOps, for instance, and it's gonna pull 50 tweets with this specific hashtag. The output is gonna be tweets, obviously, that they will be concatenated in the file and passed on to the next module. Let's move on to the text classifier now. So the input of this text classifier should be the previous output. I'm able to do that in Ryax using the reference value option, which is an option allowing you to have a dynamic value generated by a previous module in the workflow. So let's click on that, and I'm able to fetch the get tweet resulting data output. So now my modules are all interlinked, they're all set up. You see they have these green checkboxes on each of them, and my workflow is consistently valid. Let's check the warnings. I have no warnings here, so it means that my workflow is ready to be deployed. In the Ryax platform, deployment means that the workflow is in a run-ready state, meaning that it's able to accept new triggers and generate executions. Let's deploy it. Click on to deploy. I see that my workflow is deploying. Let's refresh. It's been deployed, so my workflow is running. You see that the little links are flowing here. I can now access executions. Since my workflow is programmed to run once a day, the first actual trigger will be instantaneous after the actual deployment of the workflow. So let's have a look at the executions. As you can see, I have 3 steps in my workflow: the trigger, the tweet, and the classifier. These 3 steps have been spread properly. They're all done. They've run in less than 3 seconds according to the timestamps. So I can now access the results of my text classifier. Let's have a look. When I click here, I have access to the execution details page, showing a lot of metadata, a timeline chart, so that I can optimize my workflow when it's running properly. And most importantly, I have access to logs. Now my workflow runs without errors, but when you have errors, you can debug them and access more detailed warning messages in the logs. Let's move on a bit down. So, as you can see here, I have 50 lines with different tweets. Each of the tweets are recalled here. So this is, for example, one of the tweets. You don't want to miss this. Presentation is next level. You have the prediction of the model. So the model deemed this tweet as rather positive with a confidence index of 98.46%. The publisher was Untitled Software, and we have the timestamp of the tweet here. It's been published this morning. So I have access to all the results of my text analysis tweets. Some of them are negative, some of them are judged rather positive, and they are accessible in the logs. The second way I have is also I can download the predictions result file. This is the output of this text classifier module, and instead of seeing it in the logs, I can just click download here and access the file to be able to use it on the desktop. So now let's see how we can improve this workflow. Let's go back to the studio, back to my workflow. It's still deployed, so if I want to modify any part of the workflow, I need to stop it first. Let's stop it. It's undeploying. It's in valid state again. It means that it's being undeployed already. So an easier way to access the results of this text classifier module would be to have a friendly way to display them. And for that, we'll use a Google Spreadsheet publisher that we're going to add at the end of the workflow. This publisher is not present yet in the Ryax platform. As you can see, if I start Google, I don't have any Google Spreadsheet module. This is one instance where I needed to build my own module by myself. To be able to fetch the module I've built in my GitLab repo, I'll use the GitLab connectivity feature of Ryax. So let's go on to my repository. So here's my repo. I published my module here. It's called Publish to Google Sheet. I just copy the URL of this repo and use the repositories section of Ryax to scan my specific repo. So let's create a new repository. The name will be Google Spreadsheet Publisher. My URL is following, so I just open it. It's here. I click on Scan Repository, enter my credentials, and click on Scan Repository. The scan results give me my module, the one I see. It's version 1.1. It's got its ID, and I have the option here to build the module. So once I build this module, I'll be able to access it in the module store and also use this specific module in any kind of workflow. So let's build it. So the module build started. If I want to see the status of the build, I'm just accessing it using the module build sections of Ryax. So my module has been successfully built. I can now access this in the module store. Let's type on Google. Okay, it's here. Version 1.1, publish data to Google Sheet. When I click on it, I can access the documentation, the types of input it takes, the type of outputs it outputs, and be able to see what it does. Let's go back to the studio and add it. So this is my workflow. I'll be able to find my module now. Let's drag and drop it, link it with the previous ones. So basically what this module will do is it's going to take the data resulting from this text classifier and display it on a Google spreadsheet. This is how my Google spreadsheet looks now. It's empty and it's going to be populated by my module. Let's set it up. So as you can see here, it's a publisher, so it means that it's being used as an endpoint of a workflow. To set it up, I'm gonna specify which data I want to publish on the spreadsheet. Since I want the data from the previous module to be displayed, I'm going to select reference value and the module of the data of my text classifier module, the predictions. Here I'm going to go and give it the spreadsheet ID of my actual spreadsheet. The token file has been specified in the module description, and the credentials are also specified in the module documentation. My module is now ready to be deployed onto a new workflow. My module is now ready. I can deploy my workflow again. Workflow is deployed. Once again, one execution has been triggered, so let's have a look at the executions. I see, so my new execution of this same workflow, the second one, 10 minutes later, roughly, it's still running. The text classifier is still running. Let's refresh. It's now done, so the classifier has processed the tweets and published them onto the Google Sheet. So here is my Google spreadsheet. As you can see, it's been populated with the results that we've seen in the logs of the text classifier module, but in a much more friendly way. You can see here the exact content of the tweets with the smileys and the emoticons as well, the publisher of the tweets, as well as the prediction and confidence index. Here we have the 50 tweets that we've pulled using the API module, and they've all been analyzed, and we have the results over here. So it's a much more friendly way to access results. Let's say that now, instead of a positive or negative sentiment analysis, I want to categorize these tweets. So let's go back to my previous workflow. My workflow is still running. If I let it run, it's going to run once a day and go on tomorrow and the next day. So let's stop it. To demonstrate how easy it is to swap modules when you want to test new versions of your modules or new ways of building your workflows, we're going to change this text classifier module, which is a positive or negative sentiment analysis, into a category analysis. So my workflow is undeployed, it's ready to be modified again. Let's delete this module. The module I'm going to use is still a text classifier, but it uses a different model to analyze tweets. It's going to categorize them in different categories. So it's a different model that I just dropped here. Once again, I need to specify what the inputs are. So there are reference values, and I'm using tweets from the Tweet API module as an input of this specific module. Since I've changed this module, I also need to update the input data that's going to flow into the Google Sheet module. So let's specify reference value again and use the predictions from this specific module. And it's all done. You see my workflow is valid. I've just swapped this module with another. to be able to conduct a very different analysis in a few seconds. So let's deploy the workflow again. Workflow has been successfully deployed. Let's have a look at the executions now. The workflow is done. Now we can access the Google spreadsheet. So here's the spreadsheet. So once again, we have the tweets over there. We have the publisher here, the timestamp here. And what's more with this model is that we have the category here. So miscellaneous entity groups, scoring, same as the confidence index, and the specific words that we use for categorization. So these are the organization categories, the person categories. So all these codes are available in the module documentation so that you can see exactly what they mean, but that's basically what it's doing. So as you can see, we've swapped very effectively two modules within a few minutes to be able to test different ways of pulling tweets, analyzing them, and publish this data onto a user-friendly Google Sheet.